A place called, well, it's just off of South Charleston, yeah, of all places. Charleston, Illinois. And I was preaching at this old Church of Christ. It's just absolutely beautiful. All this mahogany. It was built to preach in. You walked in, you went like that, you could just hear that snap come back at you. And I had a wool coat on, because it was the style at the time. You remember those days, gentlemen? August, wool coat, wool pants, suspenders, and a tie, right? And it had to be 104 degrees in the building with 99% Illinois corn humidity. And I sat down in the pew. When I got up, I could hear my jacket separating from the varnish. That's how hot it was. What's that got to do with this? Well, I'm wearing a coat, okay. And then they turned on these 9 hurricane fans to provide air. And there went the acoustics. And I had to scream this message to a congregation of 25 people built in a church seated for 400. And the little old lady, she comes and says, "Young man, I felt so sorry for you up there in that wool coat." I don't know. Just a memory, one of those memories, back when preaching was different. Parable Lane, number 9 here. Heart roots, Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. And I'm going to give you here. There was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, who feasted sumptuously every day, and at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with ulcers. That's what the Greek says from Dr. Luke. Covered with ulcers, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores, his ulcers. So one point, same point as last week. One point. God gives you what you need for this life and the next. Use it how? Prudently. And I have a different question for this week. Where do your heart roots anchor? Now, can I answer that question for you? No, you can answer it. Where do my heart roots lie? Can you answer that question for me? No, but I can. Sometimes in shame. Sometimes in thank you, Lord. So the last time we were at Liberty, pristine place, whatever it's called now, the nursing home in Jamestown. The last time we were there, I was approached by one of the nurses, who I don't know her name, but I know she's a devout Christian. She said, "Preacher, would you mind very much visiting so-and-so in this other room? He could really use someone to talk to." So I walked down there, and there was a guy whose face was sunken in right here. Sunken in right there, all the way this way. So he had jaw cancer. A farmer, and he knows some of you. And his voice was so bad, his wife had to interpret every word he had to say. So I said, "Well, do you mind if I come back and visit you again?" They said, "Oh, that would be wonderful." They're not members of the Grove, obviously. So I said, "Okay." Now, you could take this confession here and say, "Well, Bill's an all right guy." You can say, "Bill's a scoundrel." Take it as you will. So I've been visiting him on Tuesdays since then. And this week, I'm sitting with Barbara, and I saw his wife come in. And Bill's busy on some Tuesdays. And I kind of forgot about them, and then I walked out the door, and I said, "Oh, they're in there." Car. Nope, gotta do it. That's a sacrifice of time. I didn't have to do it. She didn't know that I was going to miss them. But my heart said, they need you. Now, nothing special happened. But this, their anniversary is today. 40 years of marriage. So I'm going to make sure they get an anniversary card from the Grove. A little small nothing, if you will, but it's that way of going outside ourselves and saying, well, this might cost me 30 minutes, and it did, but was it worth it in the grand scheme of things? Would I have gone to hell if I had not visited? No. But did God expect me to go? Yes. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we got the rich man and Lazarus. It's not a parable, it's a teaching illustration. The Pharisees scoffed and ridiculed the parable of the dishonest manager. You see, the Pharisees were lovers of money and heard all these things, and they ridiculed him. It means they turned their nose up at him. So Jesus, knowing their hearts were not right about the law or using the opportunities of life, Jesus gives them some sharp and thorny wisdom to chew on. To them, it was all about the show. And then Jesus gives them this illustration. So it's not the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. It's the parable of the rich man, and it's the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Before we go into that, the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, verse 14, heard all these things, and they turned their noses up at him. They ridiculed him. And he said to them, you are those who justify yourselves before men. It's all for show. Everything you people do is for show. You want other people to glorify you. But God knows your heart, and by the way, so do I, if you could hear that undertone. For what is exalted among men is an abomination. If you want to, you could put down the word stinks, because that's what the word abomination means in Greek. For what is exalted among men stinks in the sight of God. The law and the prophets were until John. Since then, the good news of the kingdom is preached, and everyone forces their way in. This means all the people you didn't expect are now saying, I want in, I want in, I want in. But it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. And what is the heart of the law, Christians? Love God 100% and love your neighbor. See, they've forgotten that. This is what it's all about. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another, it just comes out of the blue, doesn't it? It comes out of the blue. Oh, it's highlighted in blue in my notes, too. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. It's all about the show. All one needed to do to divorce their wife was this: I don't like you no more. Here's your note. Get out. And she had to be out by 4 sundown. And you could trade in your aging wife for a trophy wife. And doesn't that go on today? Or you could trade in your, I'll change the word to spouse, or you could change your poorer spouse for a richer spouse. Could I say that? I just did. So he hits them with some thorny wisdom because he's striking at the hearts. He knows the hearts of everyone he's talking to. And Bill, when are you going to get to the message? We're almost there. This is what we call the introduction. It's all about the show. It's all about the show. So now we move into the actual lesson. There was a rich man clothed in purple. What was the guy's name, by the way? What was the rich man's name? Rich man. I mean, we don't know, do we? But we know the name of the other guy, don't we? All right. Who was clothed in purple. These are his outer garments. Purple, very expensive. It was made from certain shellfish. You had to get up thousands and thousands of these shellfish. You grind them up. You get the purple dye out of them. You dip the white in the purple, and you come out with purple cloth. And only the very, very rich could afford this kind of things. It was usually actually only for royalty. You think the Bible talks about underwear? It does right here. and fine linen. That's their undergarments, made of flax, very, very soft compared to that wool on the outside, okay? So his outer garments are gorgeous, and his undergarments are comfortable, and who feasted sumptuously every day. This is the condition of the rich man. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with ulcers, who desired to be fed with whatever fell off the guy's table. Do you think this was a secret to the man inside the fine house? Do you think he looked outside and went, I just cannot believe that guy is dirtying up, soiling, if you will, the gorgeousness of my properties? Moreover, even the dogs came and licked. Now, you might think that's a good thing. This is a bad thing, because the dog was considered an unclean animal, and if it licked you, you were unclean. So, see, the ulcers wouldn't make you unclean unless it were bleeding, but the dog's saliva would. So this isn't a thing of comfort, dogs licking your soul. It makes you unclean until evening. See, the story is not about paradise and Hades. The poor man died, was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. By the way, that Abraham's side word means the head of the table, the place of honor at a banquet. That's why we know it's just an illustration story. The place of honor. That's paradise to the Jewish mind. The rich man also died, was buried, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off and Lazarus at the place of honor. Now, no doubt, there's a wonderful place to go and there's a terrible place to go, but that's not the point of the lesson. That's a sidebar. What do we need to know? Verse 24. And he called out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the end of his finger in water and cook. Hey, what did you ever do for Lazarus your entire life? And you're asking him to put his finger into water now and come and serve you as you never served him. He's trying to use Lazarus. And cool my tongue, for I am in anguish in this flame. This is a look into the future. Parable has nothing, the story has nothing to do with it. The story is not about paradise, the world of the resurrected righteous, or Hades, the world of the resurrected unrighteous. Got that? There's a resurrection for both. One to eternal glory and the other to eternal separation from God. The resurrection hasn't happened yet, but it will. This isn't a story about the afterlife. See where I'm going here? This is not a story of, because this is what I hear people preaching. Oh, this is about the afterlife. This is about Hades. This is about torment. This is about, no. Has nothing to do with it. Luke is just setting up a picture of these two people. But the story is really about the rich man. It's not a story about the afterlife. Angels might guide us. No, they will guide us to heaven and to await the resurrection. But the idea of seeing and communicating with the resurrected unrighteous, the torment, does not make sense. It certainly points out the fact that judgment and eternal destiny, just like that great song, the Hotel California. Are you ready? The last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage to the place I was before. Relax, said the night man. We are programmed to receive. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. The rich man knew there was no getting out. But that's not the story either. That's not what the purpose of the story is either. You know what? It's not, put the word even in that outline. It's not even about money, though you would think it is, right? He's a rich guy. All rich guys are what? They're all bad. Isn't that right, Kevin? Oh, he's a rich guy. I'm sorry. Okay. All rich people do not go to the lake of fire, and all poor folk do not automatically go to the new creation. It's not how much or how little one has. It's about what you do with what you have. Got that? It's about what you do with what you have. Wow. So the story is about the roots of the heart. Verse 25. But Abraham said, "Child, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner had bad things. Now he's comforted and you're in anguish. And besides all this, between us is a great chasm has been fixed, like the Grand Canyon, in order that those who would pass from here to there may not be able to, and none may cross from there to us." Now, the rich man now understands something. There ain't no getting out. There's no comfort where he is. There will never be comfort where. So what does he want? What does he think of? He thinks of home. He says, I got 5 brothers who were raised exactly the way I was raised. I don't want them to go here. Please send that guy Lazarus somehow back to warm my blood. They're not going to listen. Abraham says something that we're going to get into not this moment, but later. This is about the root of the heart. What's the point? The point is, where do the roots of your heart go? This ties directly into the first 2 parables Jesus teaches on the Perean Road. That's this series here, the Perean Road. It's the east side of the Jordan River, is where Jesus has been for months. Do you remember the Good Samaritan and the rich fool? Who remembers that parable, those 2 parables? Okay. Was the rich man in today's story good to his neighbor Lazarus? Yes or no? Probably not. I'll go worse than that. Definitely not. Was the rich man's heart rooted in service and love to the poor and the destitute, or was it rooted in love for his riches? You see, the Good Samaritan caring for the hurt. Do you see the rich fool? I will tear down my barns because this is where my heart is, my treasure is here. Could the rich guy could he have afforded to send a lunchtime meal out to Lazarus every day, if nothing else? Yes, he could have. For some reason he chose not to. Could he afford to have sent a doctor down to get some ointment for his sore? Could he have done that? Could he have directed a sunshade for the guy? Jesus' point is not only that he could have, but he should have. The majority of Christians around the world are poor. And many, by the way, are what we call dirt poor. Now, there's a difference between being poor and being dirt poor. Here's what it means. A poor person might have a house, and it probably has a floor made of wood or stone. Back when the term dirt poor came out, that meant when you swept the floor, you were sweeping the dirty dirt off the cleaner dirt. That's dirt poor. God gives his bounty to us. The majority of Christians around the world, and many are dirt poor, even they are expected to treat those poor themselves with dignity, respect, and love. And God gives us bounty to care for ourselves and others. They will know we are Christians by our love. So how do you use your life opportunities? Heart roots are small tendrils that reach out and anchor on to what is important in your life. They are small things and not large things that you reach for to give the things that give you the most joy. What could the rich man could have done for Lazarus? He could have given him food daily. He could have given him a bed. He could have given him clothing. He could have given him medical care. He could have taken him in as a long-lost son, but he chose not to. Would his eternity have been different had his heart grasped onto the love for his neighbor and obeying the law in love? Absolutely. What small things can you do to make your heart roots grow, grasp the love for your neighbor? I have a friend who keeps 320s in his wallet, so that if he's ever in a grocery store and someone says, I don't have enough to pay, he's ready to pay. I have friends who actually have jars, and at the end of the day, whatever's in their pockets, pocket change-wise, goes into the jar, and that goes to missions. And there are those who pick out one single person and help them. Okay, Bill. Good gracious. Where's the grace? Where is the grace at all? You're making me feel bad. Grace is there for the Christian. But when you have your final talk with the Father for that day, as you review the activities of the day, and you see a place and time when your heart roots move towards selfishness, when you did not love your neighbor, then confess the selfishness and ask for the strength to do better by his grace tomorrow, and he will. You're forgiven already. Just admit you're wrong. And then the next day, see if the one you could have helped still needs help. Jesus gave it all. Left the ivory palaces, as the old song says, and came to this earth of woe. And he says, my friends, follow me and do as I have done. And he wants to be your friend. Let's stand and sing this